Should you collect Social Security early and invest it? This is one of the most common questions that is posed when talking about when to file for Social Security. What is the break even between taking at 62 and taking less from your portfolio and leaving your portfolio to grow versus delaying until 70, receiving a larger Social Security benefit, but again, taking larger withdrawals while delaying Social Security? Where is that given break even? And the reason I want to cover this today is because I've reviewed so many different break even calculators, so many different break even analysis from individuals, from retirees, and I see a lot of key parts around Social Security being left out of that equation. And so in this video today, we're going to be covering, can your portfolio keep up with the return on investment that you will receive from Social Security, from specifically delaying Social Security? Now, we've got a lot of ground to cover, and so let's get into it. Now, a big issue that I see when I'm looking at different break-even calculators is people undervaluing Social Security. And there's a few interesting dynamics that are important to include in this break-even equation. Towards the end of the video, I'll talk about additional considerations that we aren't including in this analysis. For those that are interested in learning about some of these more undervalued parts of Social Security, I'll link to 2 different videos in the upper right-hand corner around 3 reasons Social Security is often undervalued, and then talking about how your Social Security benefit is actually taxed. But some important things to consider around Social Security is the earlier that you take Social Security from your full retirement age, you receive a permanent reduction. That permanent reduction is anywhere from 5 to 7%, depending on how early you are taking that Social Security benefit. For every year you delay past full retirement age, you get an 8% step up. Now, most people are adequately calculating on these raises and reductions, but specifically in this low interest rate environment, when we're yielding less from these safe parts of our portfolio, these raises and reductions are more important than ever. Number 2, Social Security is an inflation-adjusted asset. Now, most of our assets or income streams are hurt by inflation. Social Security is set to adjust for inflation. So in this high inflation environment that we're seeing right now, going into 2022, we're seeing a 5.9% Social Security inflation adjustment. Now, this happens across all benefits, but we know on a dollarized basis, receiving a 5.9% step up in benefits is more meaningful on a larger benefit than it is on a smaller benefit, as if you took at age 62. And then finally, one of the most misunderstood parts around Social Security is the tax savings power of Social Security. And this has to be included within this break-even analysis. It makes Social Security significantly more valuable than other assets. Depending on which accounts you are withdrawing from, you can essentially determine how much of your Social Security benefit ends up being taxed, but you have to be strategic about it. But nonetheless, there is tax savings power around Social Security that we're making sure we include within these break-even analyses that we're going to talk about within this video. Now, let's talk through a few assumptions that I used. I'll just kind of go over this briefly. Now, it's important to understand right off the bat that this is going to be more of what I would call a punchline video, meaning that I'm not going to be walking through tables with numbers through each and every year showing how much your Social Security benefit is at that time, how much you have in taxes that you're owing, how much your portfolio is, and all of those different dynamics. I'm going to show a chart that basically shows portfolios through time and shows that given break even. Now, I'm going to be using a situation where the retiree is taking portfolio withdrawals from traditional IRA accounts. So it's going to be fully taxable money. In the case of couples, I'm assuming the couple is the same age. So when I use full retirement age of age 67, okay, they're both going to be receiving reductions if they file earlier at age 62, and they're both going to be receiving those same step-ups on the same timeline if they delay to age 70. Notice if we have couples at different ages, this will change the break-even slightly based on those given dynamics. We're including both taxes and inflation. This is very important to run an accurate break-even analysis. But again, it's going to be a little bit more of a punchline video, being a little bit more general and just showing the answer. If you guys want to dig a little bit deeper into the actual numbers and go a little bit deeper into the assumptions I use, the different ways to calculate that given break even, let me know and I can certainly record another video, but I want to make sure that's something that you guys want to see before I go through the work of recording that extra video. So let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see additional videos on the exact calculations. And so from a visual standpoint, this is essentially what it's going to look like from an income analysis of taking Social Security at 62. We'll notice that this person retires at age 62. Okay, they're going to have an income need that's going to be just statically growing for inflation through time. And then we're going to have them delay until age 70 or look at them taking as early as 62. Obviously, if they were taking as early as 62, we'd be looking at a smaller Social Security benefit, but it would be static throughout. We wouldn't see these large portfolio withdrawals. Well, the opposite is true with an income analysis of taking at age 70. We notice while this person is delaying their Social Security benefit, They're having to take all from their portfolio, all from their IRA assets. That's leading to larger taxes on the front end. That's leading to a larger portfolio withdrawals. But then once they turn on Social Security, they're going to have a much larger Social Security benefit. And so it's going to cause them to take significantly less for the longer duration of their given retirement. And so let's start walking through a few different comparisons. I'm going to be looking at comparisons through 3 different lenses. The first lens we're going to be looking at is various growth rates. Now, the situation that we're going to be using is static through this first set of comparisons. We're going to be using a couple. Their full retirement age combined benefit is going to be $50,000. And so they're going to receive a 30% reduction for filing as early as 62. And they're going to receive a 24% step up in benefits as they delay until age 70. Okay, their goal income is going to be $100,000 and they happen to have a $2 million portfolio. Now, first, we're going to be looking at a 4% static growth rate. What I mean by static growth rate is just 4% per year, no volatility within that. We're just receiving 4% as if we were owning a 4% CD. Now, in this graph here, we see that when this person is delaying Social Security, they are obviously taking a hit from delaying. Up until age 70, they're taking all of their income from their portfolio. They're not receiving any Social Security benefit. So in the first couple years of this break-even analysis, this is when that gap is going to grow the largest. But what we'll notice is as soon as this person files for Social Security, they end up converging quite quickly. They file at age 70, and by the break-even in here we see at age 81, this red line, is when delaying this person's Social Security benefit surpasses in terms of your overall portfolio, passes taking at age 62. Again, we're looking at a 4% static growth rate here. Now, an important thing to consider, it's not just about the break-even. It's about what happens before the break-even, and it's about what happens after the break-even. So now before the break-even, in every situation, we'll notice that there is a gap here. Again, as I just described, you're taking 100% of your income from your portfolio as you're delaying until age 70. But we also need to focus on what happens after the break-even. We see that when this couple takes their Social Security benefit at age 62, and they take their goal income for as long as they can, their portfolio runs out of money here at age 90 or 91. Versus if they delay their Social Security benefit, their portfolio lasts about 5 to 6 years longer and they run out of money at age 97. And so it's very important to also understand what happens after there is a portfolio. Again, in current dollars, their $50,000 Social Security benefit in current dollars would have adjusted down to $35,000. In current dollars, their Social Security benefit at age 70 would be $62,000. And so it's important to understand what happens after there's a portfolio failure. There is a wide difference between how much they're receiving on an ongoing basis, just purely from Social Security. After their portfolio is done, they're receiving far less when they take it at age 62 versus when they delay. Now let's look at another break-even, increasing the static rate of return by 2%. And so what we'll notice with every increase in rate of return, the break-even will move back slightly. So now we're looking at a 6% growth rate. Notice we still have this same income gap here from this person taking all of their income from their portfolio. And now we see these two meet and converge, and the delaying portfolio surpasses the taking at 62 portfolio at age 83. But again, it's important to look at also what happens after that break even. What you'll notice is the delayed portfolio, because they have a larger Social Security benefit and they're taking far less from their assets on an ongoing basis, keeps growing in this situation. Whereas the take at 62 portfolio essentially does the opposite, where it falls significantly. And the longer this person lives, the more longevity risk they will have. Let's look at earning an 8% static growth rate. Well, once again, now we see the break-even age pushed back to age 88. And now we see once again the delaying portfolio still surpasses the taking at 62 portfolio, but it takes a little bit longer to happen. And then finally, when we look at a 10% static growth rate, we look at, in this scenario, running this out to age 100, now they don't meet. There isn't a break even. So the higher return that your portfolio can earn, yes, it makes a little bit more sense to take it at 62, depending on what age we're looking at potentially passing away. Now, there is a very important thing that we should note here, and maybe you've already picked up on this as we've been walking through a few of these different growth rate comparisons. There is an asymmetric trade-off with Social Security. Here's what I mean. If investment returns are incredible, higher than 10% per year, or you pass away early, taking at 62 can leave slightly more money to the next generation, depending on, again, when you pass away. Delaying Social Security is a fantastic risk mitigation tool, though. It defends against complete failure risk and typically will win the longer that you live. And so, for instance, here's what I mean by this. We don't know what we're going to earn on our portfolio going forward. If we did, a lot of decisions in retirement would be a lot easier. But here's what I mean by asymmetric trade-off. If we earn a higher return on our investments, Notice that yes, taking at 62 will be a slightly better upside. But the more that we earn on our investments, yes, we will be better off delaying depending on what age we're looking at passing away. But the upside that we earn is much smaller than the risk that we mitigate by delaying until 70. Here's what I mean. So let's say we earn 10% on our money. Again, the math would say that we should take Social Security at 62 and thus allow our portfolio to compound at that large growth rate for the future. But the biggest gap that we see within the take at 62 versus delayed portfolio in this given situation is at age 79. Now, if we look at this on the screen, this is right around that $5 million mark. Now, the biggest gap here is about $566,000. So this would be as if the taking at 62 portfolio has $5.5 million in it, and the taking at 70 portfolio has only $5 million. And so, yes, there is an upside here from taking at age 62, but notice it's not that large of an upside, all things considered. Versus if we look at a worse growth rate, such as 4 or 6%, now we notice that we risk portfolio failure much sooner by taking at age 62. And so we don't know what our return is going to be. Notice that when we delay till 70, even in certain portfolio failure cases, we still have a larger Social Security benefit that we are keeping and maintaining, at least to cover our basic living expenses. We still don't have a portfolio. Our portfolio has failed, obviously, in that given scenario, but we're receiving far more from our Social Security benefit. Versus if we take at 62, we're forced to live on significantly less. And so by taking Social Security early, we see that there's a lot more that we're risking over the long term versus delaying Social Security. Yes, we might be risking more if we pass away before we're even able to take Social Security. But again, it's a risk mitigation tool. There's a lot more downside that we're protecting by delaying Social Security versus the potential upside that we could get by taking Social Security early and either passing away early or earning a higher interest. Now let's look at a different way to compare this break even. Now we're going to be looking at varying income gaps. So the amount that you're receiving from Social Security relative to the amount that you want to take as a goal income. So now we're looking at an individual, not a couple. Their full retirement age benefit is $20,000 in this first scenario here. Their goal income is $60,000 and they have a $900,000 portfolio. Throughout all of the following scenarios, we're going to be looking at a 6.5% static growth rate. And then I'm also going to be showing how much Social Security is left at the time of portfolio failure. So in this first situation, this person has $900,000. They're taking $40,000 plus taxes from their situation. And we see that taking at 62 versus delaying this person's portfolio, there is not a break even. Notice that they both run out of money before the delayed portfolio can surpass the taking at 62. So what does this all mean? Again, earlier I told you to focus on what happens after the portfolio failure. So yes, technically this portfolio of delaying Social Security fails 1 year earlier than taking at 62. But what is this person left with at the time of portfolio failure? Again, they're earning 6.5% on their money. Their portfolio growth can't keep up with their income withdrawals. But what's left at the end, if they took their Social Security benefit at 62, this person would only have $24,101 that they'd be able to live off on an annual basis. If they delayed until age 70, they'd have $42,000, almost $700 that they'd be living off on an ongoing basis. And so again, the asymmetric upside and downside of taking Social Security at 62 versus delaying really plays out here as far as how much this person is mitigating their risk from living longer by having more coming from Social Security. Let's look at the same situation, but now this person is receiving $30,000 as their full retirement age benefit. And once again, we need to be thinking about not only when the break even happens, but also what happens after the break even. Notice that taking at age 62, we now have a portfolio that fails much sooner here at age 90 versus the delaying Social Security portfolio lives out till age 95. So we get about 5 more years of portfolio of goal income that we're able to take from our situation. And at the time of both failures happening, we're left with $40,903 from age 62 benefit versus delaying our Social Security benefit, we're receiving $72,000, almost $500 at that given point. Let's say that we have a $40,000 full retirement age benefit. And so in this given situation, we see the break even now here is at age 83. But once again, what happens after the break even? And so for this individual, the longer that they live when they take their Social Security benefit at age 62, the higher risk of ruin that they have. Notice that we see this person's portfolio falling off in a very big way. This is because they received a smaller Social Security benefit, received it for their entire life, but their portfolio withdrawals are growing as we move through time because they don't have the same inflation-adjusted protection for their guaranteed income. Versus delaying this person's Social Security benefit until age 70, we see that there is no longevity risk here. Their portfolio keeps growing through time. And so we see some drastic differences between not only growth rate, but also the income gap relative to the amount we have coming from Social Security versus the amount of income that we're taking. Notice this can change the given break-evens, and it can change the ROI of our Social Security benefit based on our given situation. Now, the final comparison that I want to show is showing simulated returns. And I just want to show this very briefly. This is something we can dive deeper into if you guys are liking this kind of break-even analysis, talking about Social Security filing strategies. We go a lot more in-depth in additional videos. If you let me know down below in the comments if you're liking these type of videos, all of the different variables that we have to consider when thinking about our filing strategy. Now, previously we've been looking at just static returns through time, and we know there are some issues with using static returns. When we're using a 6% static growth rate, there isn't some mystical 6% CD that's available to us where we can invest and just receive that very static growth rate moving through time. We know that we're going to receive variations in our growth rate based on market volatility, based on how our portfolio is invested. And so in this situation, we're looking at a couple. They're looking to take about $80,000 in goal income, and their full retirement age Social Security benefit is $40,000. They have a $1.5 million portfolio here. Now, when we simulate returns, we have to look at two different components here. We have to look at growth rate as well as standard deviation. And standard deviation essentially measures the market volatility that we might see. And so, for instance, stocks have historically done around 10%, but with a fairly high standard deviation, around 16%. And so we've seen situations, we've seen 10-year periods where stocks have averaged, in that 14, 15% range. Well, we've also seen things like the lost decade, where we saw two crashes in a 10-year time period where the market really didn't grow at all. And so there's a lot of variation that we can see the higher that our volatility of our portfolio is. So this is why it's important to simulate returns and not just use static growth rates. And what we'll notice based on given simulations, the break-even starts to change. So we're using an 8% growth rate here with 10% standard deviation. You'll notice that the delaying portfolio wins at 89. Now, in this situation, there's no risk of ruin. In fact, their portfolio grows through time because we're looking at some fairly significant growth periods here. In every simulation that we do, we're going to see slightly different results. This is the whole point of running a Monte Carlo on your situation, running your situation under 1,000 different simulated return periods so that we have a high statistical test when we're looking at break-evens of really any decision we're making in retirement. So now we're looking at the exact same situation. We're still using simulated returns, looking at an 8% growth rate, but then again, looking at 10% standard deviation, so we're looking at varied returns, varied stimulated returns. And so now what we notice, still using the same return assumptions, the same standard deviation, we see a wildly different outcome. Now we see the break-even moved up to age 79. We can see from this person's portfolio, they obviously had some significant growth years in here, but then they had some significant down years as well. There must have been some market volatility that this person experienced. And so because of that, the break-even age was moved up to age 79. But again, it's important to look at what happens after the break-even. When this couple took their Social Security benefit at 62, we'll notice that in this simulated return trial, this person ran out of money at age 87. Versus when they delayed their Social Security benefit and the break-even happened at 79. But what happened after the break-even? This person's portfolio ended up running out of money at age 95, but we got essentially another 8 years out of this person's portfolio. And so again, coming back to that asymmetric trade-off, there's a lot more that we're risking with taking Social Security early versus delaying our Social Security benefit, as we can see here. And so this is extremely important to analyze when we're running any kind of break-even. Again, I talked about it earlier. We shouldn't just be running a break-even under static returns. Again, we can't have a portfolio that mimics a 4, 6, 8% static growth rate. There's no CD out there that's currently yielding that much. And so we generally want to simulate under simulated returns. Now, this will vary widely. It might push the break-even back or make the break-even even non-existent. It also might push the break-even much sooner, depending on what given market volatility that we see. But it's important as we are making decisions in our retirement to be simulating returns rather than just using a static growth rate here. Oftentimes, a static growth rate will make taking at age 62 look a lot more rosy than what it actually is in the real world, in real life. And so to summarize what we've all seen here, the higher growth rate that we can earn on our portfolio, the further back the break even is. But if we think about it, To earn a higher growth rate, we know that as a rule of thumb, we're generally taking a lot more risk within our portfolio. So we'll see a lot more variability as well. The lower interest rate that we earn, the closer that the break even between taking at 62 versus delaying until 70 will be. We also show that there's an asymmetric trade-off between the upside that we're gaining by potentially taking Social Security early versus the risk we're mitigating by delaying Social Security. For many situations, it's going to make a lot of sense for at least one person or an individual to delay Social Security simply for that risk mitigation. Now, although we got into certain complexities like adjusting for inflation, like looking at taxes, there are quite a few variables that we still left out. Things like required minimum distributions. So this person may be forced to take more from their IRA assets if they took Social Security early because they took less from their portfolio, and so they saw more growth in those early years. And so the break even might move up even sooner from taking Social Security early when we're factoring in required minimum distributions. Again, when you're delaying Social Security, you have more room for Roth conversion. So depending on someone's situation, there may be an added benefit to delaying Social Security to leave more room for Roth conversions. We left that kind of variable out. Varying withdrawal strategies, we looked at just taking income from a IRA portfolio. What happens if they have a taxable account or Roth IRA assets? How does that change the given break even? Dynamic allocations. If we're someone who is delaying Social Security, we may want a little bit more safety on the front end when we're taking those large portfolio withdrawals. But as we file for Social Security and we're taking less from our portfolio, we can take a little bit more risk. So that's a dynamic allocation change where, again, we likely see a bigger gap as we go through time. As we're earning a higher interest rate, once we're on Social Security, we're able to take a little bit more risk with our portfolio. Varying spousal filing options if you have a big age gap. If there's some kind of spousal option or a widow benefit that's available to you, that would obviously change some of these dynamics as well. And then also looking at varying life expectancy. If one spouse were to pass away early and pass on their larger benefit to that surviving spouse, once again, that can change some given break even. So there are quite a few variables we still left out, even though we went into certain complexities within this video. And so when each of these variables are added into this given equation, it can drastically change a break even for your situation. And that's really what matters here, not necessarily general kind of break evens, but break evens for your exact situation, which is why things need to be custom, things need to be tailored to your retirement plan. This is why we say you don't need more money, you need a better plan. You need a plan that's tailored to your specific situation. And so this is something, if you guys like this type of video, if you like talking through all the given variables that we need to be thinking about when we think about making certain decisions in our retirement, just let me know and we'd be more than happy to record a few more videos on this given topic. I think it's incredibly interesting. I think it's incredibly important within your retirement situation. Hopefully you found this video informational. Always remember, you don't need more money. You need a better plan. If you like this video, please hit the like button down below. It will help other retirees just like yourself find this video and hopefully gain some value from this video, as well as hit the subscribe button. We release videos on a weekly basis. If you want to be notified of all future videos that we release on this topic or other topics, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to improve your retirement. Hope to see you in the next video. Have a great rest of the day.